speaker is Terry Benson, who has probably done about everything to keep the AGA afloat over the years and swimming into the present generation, the future generation. He's been president. He was my, when I first discovered the New York Go Club, God, back in the early 80s, he was heading that and helped me get my introduction into real Go after 15 years of Go, but no Go in any kind of organized sense. Anyway, Terry's going to talk about rules and attitudes that help us but hinder us from getting this game going. Terry?
What I want to talk about is what is it about this game that has made it so hard for us to promote? Are there things we are doing that make it more difficult? I think there are, and my experience over now some 37 years of promoting the game leads me to at least a couple of conclusions that I come to. Other people may disagree, and clearly when someone is teaching, when Peter Friedman is teaching or anyone else is or Peter Schumer is teaching, they have to teach what works for them as teachers. So it's clearly that's an important thing, but frankly, our game here in the West is not so much a teacher's game. That's a big difference, and it's why, in my view, much of the Asian orientation to the game doesn't really work or doesn't work so well here, why it hinders us. Because most people here don't learn Go from a teacher. They learn Go because they've gotten a little book of some sort or a game set, or in my case, my parents gave me the game. They didn't know anything about it. Or they may learn it from a librarian who just got The Way to Go from the American Go Foundation, and the librarian has now read this book and is now maybe 25Q and is teaching the kids. So it's a very different model. It's a very different pattern here. And a lot of people, of course, in our country are used to learning games on their own. Give me the game, I'll learn it on my own. Don't tell me anything. That's a very different model, and that makes some differences in the game that we actually promote and how we promote it. In terms of the game itself, you can always have jargon in games. Most games have some, but some of our jargon is a little bit arcane. There are several things. Dead stones. Dead stones are one of my favorites. Those are dead stones, says the strong player to the beginner. And the beginner says, they're dead stones. Oh, okay. How do you know they're dead? Well, because black can kill them. Wait a minute, you said they were dead already. Weren't they already dead? Well, yes, they're dead because as stronger players, we look and we know they're dead. And in fact, if you take a professional and you look at, and he looks at our games even as Shodan games or 5-Dan games, the professional says, those are dead. Now, he knows they're dead. We don't know they're dead. And in fact, in our games, playing players of our level, they aren't dead. So stones really are never, right? So stones are really never dead until the end of the game. And of course, the beginners. When beginners see the end of a regular professional game, and they see that the dame haven't been filled, which is typical in the Kifu. And in fact, in dealing with the rules committee, one of the things that Sakai Sensei said many times is, the Kifu is beautiful because it's incomplete. That's its beauty, that's its art, that's its form. Fine, great for the professional. I looked at the Kifu he said was finished, and I said, that's done. That's done? No, what about that? Well, for the professional, they see obviously there are 6 moves, 3 for each. There are 3 2-point moves and 3 1-point moves. There are 2 endgame codes, none of them doesn't matter. Boom, end of discussion. Oh, yeah, there are a couple little things over here that'll just get taken care of. That doesn't work for beginners. Beginners don't know when the game is over, and I've met quite a number of people, I won't say countless, but certainly many, many people who say, when's the game over? And you say, it's over when the 2 players decide it's over. And the beginner says, no, I want you to tell me when the game is over. When is the game over? What do the rules say about when it's over when the game is over? Now, those of us who are stronger players, we can enjoy the kind of subtlety of that it is up to the players in some way. But it is tremendously confusing for beginners. They don't know when to finish the game. They don't know when it's over. They get partway through a game and they go, gee, isn't it done? Isn't it over? And you go, well, if you're the stronger player, you might come around. But they themselves don't know. And so many people, I suspect 95% of the people that are exposed to the game are put off by not knowing when it's over, not having a sense of what the game is about, not knowing how to resolve their uncertainty about when it's over. That was one of the things that led to the AGA rules, which happened to fit Tang Dynasty rules and the ancient stone counting rules as well. But the point, of course, is that in AGA rules or in any area rule set, you can play it out. You can absolutely play out everything. If you don't know whether that's dead, you put stones down until you kill it. And it's done. Stones come off the board, no problem. So beginners are quite comfortable. Now, the stronger players, oh, yeah, but that's a waste of time. Look at all those extra moves they're playing. And indeed, they're extra moves to us. But just by the way, guys, we play a lot of extra moves that the pros will say, why are you playing all those extra moves? So it's just a matter of perspective. It's just a matter of where you stand in the between earth and heaven. So how do we deal with this? Well, I think the rules need to change, need to be what we have, which is the AGA rules, with pass stones. The reason pass stones work, they work at two ends of the spectrum. They work, first of all, at the beginner end, because beginners can simply play the game until they've captured everything, or everything's a nice little neat eye. Inefficient, yes. Will it hinder their growth? Not. I suggest it will not hinder them, not very long. Those that want to pick up the game will get better, but they will be able to get to the end of the game and then get going. And if they're exposed to other players, they'll say, oh, no, we don't need to do that. And you can say, if you agree that those stones can be captured, by the way, the word dead stones should be global search and replace on the word dead stones. Every textbook, every place in the world should be replaced with trapped stones. They are trapped. They're not dead. They're trapped. They can escape. We all know how many times dead stones in our games come back to life, right? So they're not dead. They're just trapped. They're temporarily closed off a little bit because who knows, my opponent might make a mistake. So terms like dead stones, no, out. Trapped stones, please. Dame. What are dame? Well, the Japanese say dame don't count. They don't matter. Well, that's true in Japanese rules. It's not true in Chinese rules. In area rules, every point on the board counts. Every one. You're counting control of the board, not surrounded territory, but control of the board. So if I take dame and you're not playing, I'm getting points. Chinese will play the game out to the end because every point counts. And the beginners understand that perfectly well. Try to say to a beginner, oh no, that point doesn't count. And they go, why doesn't it count? Well, you can't surround it. And they look at it and they go, well, you can't? Because they don't know. They can't see instantly what you can or can't surround. And to them, but isn't that part of the board? Well, it depends on the concept that you're teaching them. So I suggest that the game we should be teaching is a game that really is a throwback. This symposium has been rather nice because it's reinforced some of my notions of rules and how they really come from an ancient game, which was probably something like a couple guys saying, I'll bet I can put more stones on this board than you can. And they put stones down until somebody couldn't put a stone down without losing a group, because you have to leave two eyes in any groups you've got. Yes, it has what's called a group tax. That is, if I have 7 groups and you have 6 groups, I'm going to have to leave 2 more points open so my groups don't die. That's the group tax. But in the ancient game, that was probably the way it was. And it's, by the way, an interesting little tactical, strategic enrichment of the game. We've kind of gotten rid of that now. So for those who think that area rules always get rid of things, they don't always. There's some things that are still there as enhancements. And in any case, you say, you're back to the basic game in many ways, the Tang Dynasty game. We play equal stones, AGA rules. Every player has to play. Pass stones, equal number, white makes the last pass. So in some ways, we've gone back to an old game in order to get a simpler game, which is more understandable for beginners and easier to teach. They can get the refinements if they care to. Because frankly, I don't give a damn whether somebody's a Shodan or a 10Q or a 25Q. I would love to have 3 million 25Qs. Right? 3 million, no problem. Let them play. We don't tend to let them play. We don't tend to let them play because we're people that really want to keep getting better. This is a hard game, and we're going to keep getting better at it. Well, that's fine. If that works for you, great. Go for it. Most people want to play games. Watch the kids. Are they really, really working at the game? No, they're playing. They're having a good time. They're putting stones down. They're playing with their friends. Okay, I get better, you get better, I win, you win. as long as you don't put that adult business of wanting to get better, wanting to achieve, no, that's a mistake, says the stronger player to the weaker player. No, it's not. It's better in your sense, but I'm having a good game. Leave me alone. Who cares? I'm having a good time. So the main thing is trying to teach a game that they can learn, and a game that's given to them as a game they can play. The difference, in Asia, if you've met many Asians, I don't know, probably most of you have at one time or another, you said, do you play Go? Do you play Go? And what does the male or female say to you? They usually say no, and you find out after you probe a little bit that they played in high school, they played in college, they played with their grandparents since they were 5. There may be 5Q, 4Q, 3Q. Unless they're Shodan, they'll say no. I was pleased to hear Hotoyumi today say that she was 6Q, 8Q. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Because in many ways, that may be part of what is limiting the growth of Go in countries like Japan, where it has fallen on somewhat harder times. But maybe that's because it's become such an elite game. Now, Go was always an elite game. We all know that. This was played by even from China on down. It wasn't played by the common people. The common people played Mahjong, or they played Shangqi, or some other game. They didn't play Go. Go was only for the elite. The sets were more expensive, and that just was the way the game grew. And it was the Honinbo and the samurai. The peasant soldiers didn't play Go. Only the samurai played Go. We don't want to do that. That's not the way we want Go to grow here. Here, we want it to be a mass game. And that's a very different attitude. Compare, for instance, tennis, my favorite. The other day, I happened to be coming out of my room here at the Go Congress, and I saw just a glimpse of some tennis players. It included an amateur 7-dan, an amateur 5-dan, and a couple of other players I didn't know, but they were probably a lot stronger than I was. The tennis, I'll describe, I won't use, it was oops, out of the court, let's go run out and get after the ball. It was horrible tennis. It was 15, 20Q tennis. If you asked them, are you playing tennis, they would say yes. They would say yes. Americans we're pretty comfortable as long as we don't put the burden of, you aren't playing until you're at this level up here. Well, we don't want to do that. To have 3 million 25Qs, we've got to stop that. We have to accept that as soon as the player can put stones on the board and get to the end of the game, I suggest using AGA rules or an area rule set. As soon as they can play a game, they're Go players. Just like Hikaru, you're a Go player. Great, you're a Go player. Just like the people out on the tennis court the other day, they were not, Yvonne Lendl, oops, that's an old name. The new guys, whatever, Nadal. They weren't Nadal, but they didn't care because they were playing the same game. And I think that's what we want to do. Yeah, there are these high levels. And if we had 3 million 25Qs, there's no question we'd have 20,000 members of the AGA and a lot of people that were playing at a very, very high level. But you have to have the breadth of the base. Right now, this is what we've got, right? A very, very narrow cone, a very small base. We go pretty high up. We may be limited. Sometimes you can get an elite game. The game in Japan was an elite game. It wasn't a mass game until after World War II, really. A little bit before the Second World War started, but mostly after the Second World War started was where the mass game started in Japan. The newspaper columns were largely what drove it. So we want to build that broader base. And to build that broader base, we have to be careful about what terms we use, what rules we use, and the attitudes that we convey as teachers and as promoters of the game. I'm a rules expert. Okay, fine. I understand the rules. I can argue with the rules. I have fights with various and sundry of the pros that are here at different times and pros in other places about the rules. Honestly, that's not the main thing. That's not what I'm mostly about, which is as a promoter. How do you make the game get better? And the notion of the AGA rules was to make the game better, to allow people of Japanese, Chinese, Korean extraction be able to play. We still count, by the way, AGA rules still counts by territory. Territory counting, it's area scoring, but it's territory counting. Because we make sure the stones are the same number of stones, you can just count the empty spaces and you know what you're doing. We make sure that it's a game the players can play. It's a player's game. We don't need referees. We have a bent 4 in the corner. It gets solved. We don't have a ruling from the last Honimbo telling us that bent 4 in a corner is dead or alive. Triple ko isn't dead. Why should triple ko be dead? Why? Because Nobunaga had a bad day the next day? Okay, it happens. But no, you design rules of a game that are logical, that are complete, that are the same from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. Current Japanese rules are not the same from the beginning to the end, by the way. They have some weird little situations that happen, and they invoke a localized ko-rule. That's how bent 4 is still dead, because you can't use other ko threats. You can't use other ko's with a bent 4 in a corner ko, among other things. They change the rules at a certain point to adjudicate it to come out the same way the rules want. Not the way the World Mind Sports rules are, which have still some little troubles. But the point is, you want a rule set that's consistent, it's clear, it's logical, it goes from the beginning to the end, it works for beginners, it solves a lot of the crazy little rules problems that the stronger players have known about for years, and those are the ones that I argue about with various people. You want to solve it at that end, and you want to have a game that everybody can play, that everybody enjoys playing, and that they can play at whatever level. If any of you remember playing down at 20 or 15Q, it's a great game. In some ways, a better game than what we play when we get better, because there's a lot more that happens. I mean, talk about a game that can turn. We all know that a game of Go, you're ahead. Don't relax, because you can't just exchange pieces and get to the end of the game. You've got to continue to play. Well, try 15 Qs and 20 Qs. I mean, I've directed enough tournaments, and you come over and you look at a 15Q game 10 minutes later, and 10 minutes later after that, and 10 minutes later after that, and you get these huge swings. And they're loving it. It's a game. You win, you lose. I mean, what is it when we watch our games, when it's a baseball game or a football game? You love it when the lead changes all the time, don't you? Isn't that what it's about? You want a game that has vitality, that has life to it, that has fun to it, but we have to be careful not to take the fun out. Whether you're teaching adults or kids, you have to let them play. It is a game, after all. It's something we take our spare time to do. It's not something, it should never be work. It's interesting to watch Ming Ming and how hard she worked to get where she was, and how harsh her parents were in some ways. A different form, fine. Some people are going to do that. Some families are going to do that. No problem. I do a lot of soccer stuff. Fine. There are millions of kids playing soccer in this country. Most of them play very poorly. But it doesn't matter, because they're having a good time. Now, is it a sport? Sure, it's a sport. You're exercising this, which frankly lasts you a lot longer than the rest of the body. And this is what gets you a little bit farther too. But so that's where we want to go with the game, or at least that's where I suggest we want to go. But it needs really a broad spectrum, everybody getting, okay, wait a minute. Outside Asia, the Asians can do what works in their country. I'm not going to tell them what works in Korea or what works in Japan or what works in China. I might, being an American and somewhat sure of myself, I might make some suggestions, but it's really not up to us. And it's certainly not up to us to tell the pros what rules they should use. Fine. Professionals are at a different level. And the rules for them, frankly, the rules in professional sports are often different for perfectly good reason. But the rules that we need outside of Asia, and I don't mean just here, because the AGA rules are now used by the British Go Association, they're used by the French Go Association, the New Zealanders and the Australians all have used an area rule set for a long time. Other people are thinking about it. It would be nice if we could get all the Western countries together in a rule, non-Asian countries, I should say, not just Western, because I spoke to a Vietnamese organizer when I was in Vietnam, and they were saying, ooh, no, that's true. Our beginners don't understand the end of the game either. Well, it's the same thing. If you're trying to promote a game where it doesn't already exist, where you aren't just part of the culture, where you can't sort of lean back and go, I don't care, we'll get enough people anyway, where you're trying to promote a game that is not teacher-based. Remember, teachers want students. So teachers will tend to teach games that need students. We don't have teachers, and I'm not sure we want a game that depends on teachers. In fact, I think we don't. Not that we shouldn't support our teachers, and I think if we had a broad base, there'd be no problem. There are plenty of tennis pros. There are plenty of golf pros. Golf being another game that uses a handicap, by the way, a great game, same difference. You get out, what's the object in golf? The object is to beat your handicap, right? It's beat your handicap. Well, that's what we do in the same sense. Very successful game. So working on a game that has the handicap, that has these attitudes, I think we can really promote the game, but we do have to let go as type A competitors, I want to get better at this game. At that sort of style, we have to let go of that, and when we see somebody playing, go, great, play. You got a question, ask me. They ask you questions, fine, answer them. You know, you want to say, well, you know, this is interesting over here, but you have to be very delicate, and mostly, you want the kids to go home, get together with their friends, and play. That's what we want. 3 million kids playing. And then after that, I don't think, mind you, I think that'll take a little while. But I think that that's where we're going, and I think that's what we should be trying to do. So thank you very much. Appreciate you listening. Peter? Hold on. Questions? Sure. Questions? Sure, questions. Come, step to the mic, though. Now that I'm up where I can stage manage, okay. You're going to get to the goddamn...
You talked about the stones being trapped but not yet removed from the board. If the beginner's now learned for a year or two and he's up to 15Q and he's teaching another new person, it's not just us at the Don.
No, it's not.
But
no,
that
it's not.
15Q person is going to say, you don't need to play that out, the game's over.
And that's what, and we have,
I think I could suggest one thing, is that what we need to
Peter,
do is change the sentence a little bit, saying not that you don't take these off, they're already dead, but you don't need to take them off, and you need to emphasize that it's all right to keep playing. So that either way is all right.
Either way, any way is, you're right that the main point is anything's all right, because in area rules and AGA rules, anything's all right. You just keep playing, keep going, whatever happens, happens. I agree. Making sure that the players at any level have the right attitude toward the players below them is a difficulty in any sport. It's easy to discourage people who are weaker than you are. It's easy to be, a putz and try to crush somebody. That is the usual slam on chess. That somebody you just want to go in and you want to kill everybody, and that's the end of it, and walk away going like this. We don't like that in Go. That's not the spirit of the game. The spirit of the game does have some of that cooperative, collaborative, I have to let you live. Maybe I'm living a little bigger than you are, but I let you live because I have to let you live. It's hard. It may be hard to get the 15 Qs to do that. But I think you want to say, look, you don't have to take them off because I'll agree that they're dead. But you know what? You want to play. I'll agree that they're trapped. You can capture them. Go ahead if you need to capture them. I think the word dead simply defines a finality of their situation. I think linguistically, it puts the wrong idea in their head. Don't play there. Don't do this. In doing the AGA rules, there was one point on which I lost, and that was suicide. I thought we should allow suicide. I see no reason not to allow suicide. Never have. But I lost on that one. Bob High and various other more conservative, traditional folks held on that one, said, no, we can't do that. And it saddens me somewhat that the current international rules also do not allow suicide, because it's certainly a difficulty with beginners. You have a beginner. They commit suicide. They put a stone down. You say, oh, they don't have any liberties. You take them off, and then you make the move. Very shortly, they realize that wasn't a good idea. Right? Wait a minute, I just put a stone down, and now you go. And what happened here? So I try not to teach that rule at all. I just say, I let it occur on the board if I can. Sometimes you have to teach it because they want to know rules, and they see it, or they've heard it from somewhere else, and you have to deal with it somehow. But again, it's a rule that makes the game more complicated, harder to teach, somewhat less logical, because there's no real reason for it, other than the Japanese tradition. Many Chinese communities, Chinese rules were not very organized. Many Chinese areas allowed suicide into the 20th century. And the Ying rules, of course, allow suicide. I think for a combination of reasons. A combination because there were some traditional Chinese that allowed it, and because Mr. Ng thought it was a more logical and clearer idea. You know, his rule set's is an excellent rule set. We have arguments about his co-rules, but by and large, they're a good area rule set, and that's why the Ng Foundation supported rule discussion for a long time. But in any case, I think the point is, how do you get everyone onto the same page? I think it's a difficulty. I think it's a good question, Jim. Peter.
Yeah, just a small point. When kids ask me, is the game over? I always answer them, the game is over when neither person thinks they can surround any more territory or capture any more stones. And so...
That's pretty good.
And I just leave it alone so they can do what they want.
Because, I mean, as I said, you kill everything you can, capture everything you can, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's very similar. It's just treacherous, and as you're teaching the game, I try to say as little as I can. The main point, going back to some of what Nolan Bushnell said, play is the way that you should learn. Play, actually doing things, is the best way to learn. You give two kids a ball, they almost come up with soccer by themselves. They certainly come up with keep away, easily. Keep away is instantaneous. Two kids and a ball, I'm trying to keep the ball and I'm not going to let you share it. Putting it through a goal is a little bit more of a little higher level, but they get to that pretty quickly. Well, same thing with Go. If you can get them in 5 minutes, you teach them very basic rules and you get them playing and you just let them play. So, isn't this a great game? A lot more. If you want to do more, fine. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. So what's your take on the terminology group versus unit, chain, or string? There isn't a good term. There isn't a good term. It's an excellent question. Rules need to have something about that, and I tend to use string, connected stones as strings, a single stone or a group of stones that are connected or a string. But I tend not to talk about groups. And remember, if you can capture them, you can capture them. If you can't, you can't. I don't know that you need a concept there. They'll understand. People learn connectivity pretty fast if they're interested, or they experience it one way or the other. So I'm not sure where the term really becomes critical until you get to a higher level, where then you want to start talking and you say, well, this group over here and this group, and you mean sort of collections of stones, and you can say, well, these are just collections. Good grief. We look at a shamari and one other stone. We say that group of stones in the corner. Well, they're not connected at all. They're not a group in any technical sense. They're just a bunch. But that's okay. It's a soft term, and I think that's probably the best way. It's just as a throwaway term. Other questions? Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. If there are any other questions, come find me out there. You guys out there, you got questions? My email's around, terrybenson.nyc.rr.org.com, and I'll certainly engage anyone who wants to engage in this stuff, because this is obviously a passion of mine.